Let's take you back to one of our lead stories now, with U.S. Ambassador Reuben Brigety apologizing after accusing the country of selling weapons to Russia. He was summoned to the International Relations Head Office to meet Minister Naledi Pandor yesterday. Dirco sent out a statement saying Brigety admitted he had crossed the line by not using diplomatic channels to voice his concerns. His claims added, of course, to the rand's weakening against the dollar. Let's discuss this further now with John Stremlau, the international relations expert from Wits University. Professor, thank you so much for your time. As always this morning, massive news headlines across the world reading, U.S. Ambassador accuses South Africa of supplying arms to Russia. And in an international news cycle that is just so hungry for anything to do with this international standoff involving Russia and what seems like the rest of the world, this is a story that was just eaten up by the media across the world. CNN, BBC, Sky, The Guardian, New York Times. Those headlines are still up there. It just says it was 2 days ago. And yet over here, we've had this massive turnaround by the ambassador. And that apology is probably not even going to be a blimp on the international headlines, is it? How do you read the turn that this story has taken?
It's very difficult because obviously this is an unfolding story that we don't know the full truth and facts on, and yet it's very important for the press to follow this. It's I think a tribute to both the United States with a free press and with South Africa with a free press that we can actually be debating this, because I think the truth will come out. It's already being speculated that there was some sort of exchange going on. The South Africans do use military ammunition from Russia, which is cheap and reliable in its forces. And maybe the scarcity of the weapons, and because they've been such a horrific war in Ukraine, that the Russians wanted to keep the commitment that they made to supply the South Africans. And so there was a swap of some sort going on. And maybe we'll find now that Reuben Brigety has at least lanced the boil and got the issue on the table. He probably did exceed his diplomatic formulation, but by being so frank. But it's a question of tough love. I mean, he admires South Africa. He was politicized by Nelson Mandela and inspired by the founders of this democracy. And so let it unfold. He has backed off a bit, but it's in diplomatic speak that really is not going to be the big story. The big story is what actually happened.
Yeah, indeed. And Ambassador Brigety did tweet late last night, and I'll just read that tweet to you. I was grateful for the opportunity to speak with Foreign Minister Pandor and correct any misimpressions left by my public remarks. Now, what do you make by the wording of that? Because he would have chosen his words very, very carefully. Nothing is left to chance with these kinds of things. A misimpression of somebody saying, I will bet my life on the fact that there was an exchange or there was arms of some sort that was loaded onto that boat. There can't really be any misconstruing what he meant by that. And I think what struck me the most about his comments is that in modern diplomacy, an ambassador of that realm in a country like South Africa, there would have been all kinds of signing off happening behind the scenes before he got the go-ahead to even have a press conference in the first place.
Well, don't forget, diplomacy is a very human business, and words are chosen carefully, but there are also deep emotions that are embedded in this. We're all human beings, and Reuben Brigety was obviously frustrated, and at the same time was aware that back in 2003, the South Africans called out the United States for the weapons of mass destruction hoopla that justified the intervention in Iraq by the Bush administration, and the South Africa was right, and there was a terrible intelligence failure. So I think that they were very careful to realize that there was some exchange of equipment that went on with the Lady R back in December, and they must have had pretty good intelligence on that. But you know, the words that he chose to condemn it may have slipped into the realm of an arms sale when in fact it was just a lend-lease or something like that. I mean, there was some sort of cover that is going to come to light, I think, now that President Ramaphosa has been pushed to have this judge take a look at the facts, and maybe it will come out. It should come out, because this is a free society, and it's treasured its freedoms because they were hard fought for.
John, is there a realm of possibility where this was a calculated move by the U.S., that they decided to send Brigety out there to stir up some, not panic, I suppose, I don't even know what the right word is, but just to stir something up, to try and get a reaction of some kind out of the South African government, if there was the belief with intelligence to support it, that something did happen in terms of an exchange with that boat in December in Cape Town, and they just sent their ambassador out there just to light a little bit of a fire under the South African government. Is there a possibility that that could have been a strategic move?
Well, you know, you're free to speculate. I do as well. It's plausible, but the frustrations that the Biden administration has had over South African positions on Ukraine and the Ukraine war, for a country that has taken such pride in supporting the African values of territorial integrity and sovereign equality as a floor on which to build integration, now to have looked the other way with regard to the Russian invasion of a sovereign nation is got to be frustrating. But also, don't forget, we are entering a campaign season, and so in the politics of the U.S., imagine if the conversation we'd be having if Donald Trump had won in 2020, and he came very close to doing so in the Electoral College, that archaic system that the U.S. has in its very imperfect democracy. And so if Trump was in power, you'd have Trump and Putin, and where would South Africa be on that equation? That's a sort of interesting question, but it's all hypothetical. So right now, I think it's very much in South Africa's interest to have the Democrats in power in Washington. They're friendly to Africa. They have a large contingent of African American supporters that really is vital to their success. And America is becoming more like South Africa, a country that belongs to all who live there. It's getting very pluralistic, and the MAGA crowd, the Trump crowd, is racist and fighting back. And I don't think that South Africa would be well served by having the Trump administration in power in Washington, although it would certainly make easier the relationship with Russia for South Africa.
You talk about the friendly relations, and that bit it has been proven to be true. But how friendly will it continue to be if a few months down the line there's this investigation that's going to be headed up by a retired judge? Retired judges in South Africa are very busy, as you know. And the Americans purported to have intelligence on their side to prove that there was an exchange of some kind that happened with Lady R in Cape Town in December. Will that relationship be friendly enough to be able to say, listen, would the U.S. be willing to say, listen, you did your investigation, this is what's come out of it, we're going to look kindly on it and we'll let this one pass? Because repercussions that have been discussed include economic sanctions and all kinds of things that have been doing the round. Is something that a struggling South African economy just can't do with right now, and the South African government would be very much aware of it. Which way do you think it could potentially play out?
Look, from an American standpoint, South Africa's success as a democracy means a great deal. Don't forget that America has had a racist history that is not unlike the apartheid regime in South Africa, except that it was for an African American minority, a black minority. But that is changing, and it's changing in important ways. And I think that America owes South Africa a very great debt because it didn't have a race war that would have redounded into the U.S. political system very badly. And so I think that there is a good deal of goodwill. Certainly, Blinken and Biden have sought to try to isolate the relationship from the conflict of interest that there seems to be in play on Ukraine. And I think that this relationship can survive this rough patch, but it will be difficult and it will take work on both sides. And I think they should prepare themselves to work at it. And it was frustrating for Brigady because the African National Congress's party document didn't give any attention at all to the American contributions to South African development, and those are significant, and in trade and in business, and as well as PEPFAR and obviously the AGOA. So I think these things will survive, but it's going to take some work on both sides.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much. As always, Professor John Stremlau, Honorary Professor of International Relations at Wits University. Always a pleasure chatting to him.